Stated we are in Job chapter 20, and we're going to hear from our good friend Zophar, and he's got some more he wants to say concerning how he sees how God handles people and their actions and their behavior. And Zophar, I think as you go through this, you're going to think that he must have started getting a little hungry, because he starts talking a lot about food stuff and things of that nature, and so we'll see. We'll examine that. Hi, Mary. We'll see if there is any thing we can glean from this, from Zophar and his appetite that he may have. But let's go ahead and get right into the reading. We're going to listen here to Job chapter 20. Let's take a listen.
Chapter 20. Then answered Zophar the Naamathite and said,
Therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer. Knowest thou not this of old? Since man was placed upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, Where is he? He shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hand shall restore their goods. His bones are full of the sin of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. Though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue, though he spare it, and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth, yet his meat in his bowels is turned. It is the gall of asps within him. He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. God shall cast them out of his belly. He shall suck the poison of asps. The viper's tongue shall slay him. He shall not see the rivers, the floods, the brooks of honey and butter. That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. Because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violently taken away an house which he builded not, surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. There shall none of his meat be left, therefore shall no man look for his goods. In the fullness of his sufficiency he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. When he is about to fill his belly, God shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. He shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel shall strike him through. It is drawn and cometh out of the body, yea, the glittering sword cometh out of his gall. Terrors are upon him. All darkness shall be hid in his secret places. A fire not blown shall consume him. It shall go ill with him that is left in his tabernacle. The heavens shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. The increase of his house shall depart, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. This is the portion of a wicked man from God, and a heritage appointed unto him by God.
All right. Well, as you can see, Mr. Zophar says a whole lot about how Job's digestive system is handling all the wickedness that he's dealing with. I find it kind of funny here. But I laugh about it only because he's trying to make a point, and he's using the human appetite and how the body handles food, and food that is good for you versus food that is bad for you. And so Zophar's trying to make an analogy to point out to Job that God works like how a lot of these systems in your own body works. You eat something bad, you end up vomiting it out. It may taste good when you're eating it, but if it's not good for you, it's going to come out. And so it's going to make your system bad. So he's kind of making these kind of statements, but trying to use natural illustrations to voice to his point. The key about all of this is that even though I see Calvin coming in here, even though Zophar is trying to make his point, and he's trying to be very clever in how he makes his point. If your point is wrong, it doesn't matter how clever you are. So you can be very persuasive and trying to explain things, but if your explanation is not the actual answer, it may be close, it may be something like the answer, but if it's not the answer, then it's not going to solve all the issues. It's kind of like if I was to say to you, well, what's the answer for the political problems in America? And somebody says, the answer is Democrats. Well, I would say, well, there's a lot of things I might agree with the Democrats, but the answer is not Democrats. Somebody else might say, well, the answer is Republicans. And I go, well, the Republicans got some things that, I might say, okay, I can see your point there, see your point there. But that's not the answer either. So neither one of those is the answer, because there is no perfect political situation. And so what we end up happening is people barking back and forth at each other, trying to explain why they have the answer, when no one does. And that's exactly what's going on here with Zophar and with Bildad and with Elihu. They're going back and forth trying to explain why their theological philosophy is the answer to Job's problem. And Job should just go ahead and admit that, you need to adopt my thinking and apply it to your problem, and then maybe God will be merciful to you. When that's not the issue. The issue is none of them got the clue. None of them have the answer. None of them really know what to do. They all have some similarities and some things that are nice and some things that seem to make sense. Just like if I go back to the political thing, there are some things that the Republicans say sometimes I go, okay, yeah, I can see that. There's some things the Democrats say that I go, yeah, I agree with that. And so forth and so on. But you never really have a person that got the answer correct all the way across. The only one that can actually do that is God. But if you don't accept that, if you think that I have an inside track, you're going to do like what Zophar and Bildad and Elihu are doing here, and Eliphaz, I should say, are doing here, and that is you're going to try to persuade people with your own theological arguments. And that's what's happening here and throughout this entire book. So as we go back into this, it says in verse 1 of chapter 20, it says, then answered Zophar the Naamanite and said, therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste. So he's saying, I've been sitting here listening, thinking about what you're saying, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm saying to myself, I got to answer this guy with the answer that has popped into my mind, my thoughts that have been generated by what you said. I think I need to respond to what you have said, Job, and to what Bildad and Eliphaz has said. I want to have something to say. So he goes on in verse 3, and he says, I have heard the check of my reproach. In other words, I heard you try to correct me the first time I said something. I heard that check. I heard you try to correct my reproach. And it says, and the spirit of my understanding causes me to answer. And he says, the spirit. In other words, he's saying the way I feel about something. Now, keep in mind, he's not talking about the Holy Spirit. He's saying his spirit. If you read that, I'm gonna read this here in the Amplified. In the Amplified it says, and I have heard the reproach which insults me. See, that's what he's feeling like. It's his own feelings, not the Spirit of God, but his own spirit. He says, but the spirit of my understanding makes me answer. So it's him. So it ain't he's not trying to say the Spirit of God is talking to me and I'm giving an answer this way. He's saying, this is the way I think about things, and I feel I need to give you an answer. And I will give him credit for that. He's saying, this is how I feel. This is what I feel about it. Now, when you get to situations where you're talking to somebody, I think that's always a good thing to do. Is to say, listen, let me tell you about, how I see it. Now, how I see it may not be the way it is. And it may be the way it is for me, but may not be the way it is for you. Because, see, a good meal for me may not be a good meal for you. If we were to all make a list and say, well, what is our favorite meal? Well, we may have one or two things the same, but we're going to have, our meals are going to be different, when it comes down to what we really like, as our favorite meal. And then say, okay, what do you want for dessert? Well, somebody's going to say, I want peach cobbler. Somebody will say, no, I want pumpkin pie. Somebody, no, I want ice cream and so forth and so on. So everybody's appetite is different. And you always got to take that into consideration, which a lot of times most people don't. Most people think everybody likes what I like. And if I like it, you like it. If I think it's right, it's right. If I think this is the way we should go, then it's the way that I think everybody should go. And we have to be careful not to push that. Go ahead, sir.
Bible says every man is right in his own eyes.
That's right. Every man is right in his own eyes and how he sees things.
Yeah, but it's not only that. Nobody's feelings is wrong. You can't tell somebody you can't feel that way.
That's true. That's right. And that's
everybody has the right to feel the way they feel, so it's not wrong. It's not wrong to them, and it may not be right to you, but your feelings aren't wrong.
Your feelings are right. Your feelings are your feelings. What Wayne has said was that just because what you feel is wrong for somebody else don't mean it's wrong for you. It's the right way you feel. It's like what I said. When I make my list of my favorite meal, and somebody says, well, that ain't my favorite meal, I'm like, well, that's fine. But it is mine. That's mine. And that's what Wayne is saying. He going, the way you feel about something is truly the way you feel about it. And that's something. Now, if I was to ask you, what's the healthiest meal for you to eat? Now we got, so now we got to stop and we got to think about it, because it may not be something that you like. The healthiest meal for you, and that still may be different, because there are some things that are healthy for one person but are not healthy for others. Most people say eating things like good healthy fish is good for most people, which is true. It's not good for me because I'm allergic to fish. So the healthiness of a meal sometimes is probably a more greater thing to discover than the favorite meal. And that's what Zophar and Bildad need to try to understand. It's not what they feel about how God reacts. It's what's right. What's the right way to feel? Now that is something that you need to try to discover. And that's what they don't do. They're talking about what they think and how they feel about it. But what's right? And that's what we're trying to find, that connection. The beautiful thing about it is the right answer is go to God for so much of what we try to do. And then when we go to God, God still will give us uniqueness in our own answers. What he gave to David was not always what he had to give to Ezekiel, and what he didn't get, the same thing to Daniel. So all of them were unique. So the key is, will you go to God and seek God? All right, let's keep going. So he's talking out of his own understanding. Verse 4, he says, knowest thou not this, of old, since man was placed upon the earth. Now, he's going back to history again, remember? He's like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to cite some history. He goes, do you not know this? From the time that man was placed upon the earth. Okay, what point are you going to make about this? Look what he says, verse 5. That the triumphing of the wicked is short. He goes, so this is the way it's been everywhere. People that are wicked don't enjoy their spoils of wicked behavior for a long time. And to a degree that may be true, but there's some wicked people that live a long life. All right? There's some wicked people that have been around for a while. All right? So it don't fit in every aspect. So what Zophar is trying to do is apply this to Job. And his accusation is, well, Job, you did well for a little while, but you're doing bad now because ultimately wicked people do bad. So what's his accusation? It's the same as what it's always been. Job, you're doing something wrong. Okay? So he goes on. He says, triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. So joys of a hypocrite are only but for a moment. So what he's saying is, Job, you're wicked, and you're hypocritical. Are those the same accusations that all three of the friends have been making all the way through here? Now, that just gets to be redundant. They're just spinning around in circles. They keep calling Job wicked, hypocritical. They're saying he's got a bunch of iniquity and sin in him. Their accusations are unstopping. They're going to continue this. Now, here's something to keep in mind. How do you apply it? There's people that are going to say something about you continuously, and they're not going to change. They're not going to see you the way you should be seen. They're going to keep calling you stubborn, or keep calling you this, or they're going to keep labeling you with some kind of a label that you know that's not me. If you were to truly know who I was, you would not put that label on me. There are other labels you might be able to label me with, but you wouldn't label me with that if you knew me. The key is they don't know Job, but God does. God says that Job was a righteous man, and he was upright. But they're trying to continuously call him hypocritical and wicked. All right, look at verse 6. Though his excellency mount up to heaven, and his head reaches the sky. So he's talking about how sometimes wicked people do well. They can mount up good things up to heaven, and they can be all the way up to the clouds. Look at verse 7. Yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. So basically he's saying it's all going to turn to crap. Everything he has is going to turn into just smelly crap. And his accusations is that Job, that's what you have become. Basically, he's cussing at Job. He's calling him a pile of doo-doo. He said, this is what happened. You're sitting in your own dung. They which have seen him shall say, what is he? And that's what they're saying about what he's saying. This is what folks are saying about you, Job. They're saying, well, what is he? What has happened to him that he has turned into this pile of a mess? Look at this guy. All his children dead. All his animals dead or stolen. His health taken away. His wife can't stand him. He smells, and all of this from a guy that we used to look up and admire as the leader and an example in our community. And now, look at him. And so what Zophar says, he's like a bunch of dung. Verse 8. He shall fly away as a dream. In other words, you think you were doing well, but all you're going to remember, it's going to be like a dream. It's just going to be memories. This is what he's saying is going to happen to Job. And shall not be formed. Yea, he shall be chastened away as a vision in the night. Job, that good time that you were having was like a dream. It's gone. You are waking up to the realities of your sin. Your sin is the life you're living in now. That's why you're suffering. That's why you're in pain. And that's why you have nothing that you can point to. Now, you got to think about Job's feelings here. I mean, how is his emotions? Because once again, we know the backstory. We know Job didn't do anything. We know Job is not hypocritical. Job is not perfect. Job is not a person without sin. All people that are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. But he hasn't done any hypocritical. He hasn't been having any iniquity. We know that. And so imagine now how he's feeling. When he knows, I haven't really done anything that you accuse him of. And you almost can say, I see why you're saying this, but I just have to disagree with you. I'm not having any issues here with that. All right, but he goes on. Zophar goes on. Verse 9. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more be beholding him. So we're saying that the places that you used to go, the eyes that used to see you in the expensive shops, they're not going to see you in the stores and in the shops anymore. Why? Because you can't go in there. They're not going to see you in the places where you used to go to, where you used to trade your oxen and trade your sheep and trade your camels. Why? Because you don't have any more oxen. You don't have any more camels. Those places that used to go to where they would welcome and see you coming in and would be happy to see you, number one, they don't want to see you, and number two, they're not going to. Why? Because you don't have any camels, Job. You don't have any oxen to trade. You don't have any more sheep to shear. God has taken all those away from you because of your sin. Zophar's hitting pretty hard, isn't he?
Yes.
Look at verse 10. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hand shall restore their goods. Alright? Now he's talking here, he's saying that his children will seek to please the poor. I think it's interesting, and I'm going to read this again in the Amplified. He says, his sons favor the poor and pay oblation, and his hands give back his ill-gotten gain, or his ill-gotten wealth. So what he's saying is, Job, even if you were to do well, and if your children were still alive, they would spend every dime you got. You see that? He's hitting hard. So Zophar's saying, you don't have any children. But if you did, because your children died, but if you did have any children, the wealth that you built up for them, they wouldn't take that wealth and seed it and grow it. They would take that wealth and squander it. They would spend every dime you worked so hard for, and before you know it, the children would be just as broke as you are right now. And so he's saying your heritage wouldn't even value the work that you did. They'd spin it up in a moment. You know, some kids are like that today. Parents will work hard, man, trying to build and save and produce some things, and you let your kids, some kids, they get their hands on it and they'll spin it up in a moment, just gone. And you got to be careful with that. You got to also take that in consideration. The beauty of it is, regardless, and no matter what Zophar is saying, and even for that matter, in our circumstances, whether we get abused like Job is getting abused or things happen, the ultimate say as to how you're in or how things will go for you from day to day is God. And I tell you what, Job is holding on here. Zophar's hitting them hard. They all are hitting them hard. And Job is holding on. I still trust in God, because by God's measure, I haven't done that wicked or that hypocritical or walked in iniquity as you are accusing me of. And so he's holding on to the measure of who God is. Even though he don't understand, well, why would God do this to me? That I don't know. Which is the key. And when we get to the last chapter here, actually we're almost halfway through here, we're going to see what God says about Zophar and Bildad and Eliphaz, and how God addresses them, because God's going to speak directly to them too. Like how they talking to Job, God's going to speak directly to them in that last chapter. So if you want to read ahead and kind of read some of the answers in the back of the book, read that last chapter of Job. You'll get to see some of that, how God addresses them, similar to how they're trying to accuse him. All right, so Zophar's going, your children would spend every dime you got. Look at 11. His bones are full of the sin of his youth. So this is what's going on. So you've been sinning since you were what? Since you were a young fella, Job. You've been doing it and hiding it. Which shall lie down with his own dust. So your bones, when you die, they're gonna decay into dust. Why? You're gonna amount to nothing. No one's gonna remember you. Why? Because you were full of sin from your what? From your youth. Zophar's letting them know that this is something that you obviously practiced for a long time and were doing well, but now that it's caught up with you. All right? And why is Zophar saying this? He's saying this because from his experience, remember he talked about how he saw things. This is how he views things to happen. Now, let me just interject this. like how I brought out that sometimes various points of views has some truth to them, but they're not universal. What Zophar is saying here is true to a degree if you are a person like who they are accusing Job of. The problem is, Job is not that person.
That's true.
And so when you get to situations where you say, well, the sinful person, they're not going to amount ultimately to the things that God may have planned for them and so forth. And all that is true. But you also got to keep in mind, who are you talking to? That makes a difference. Does it make a difference if I'm telling somebody one thing versus somebody another? Yes, because each person has different destinies. So if you got two people, one person is trying to get to California, and another person is trying to get to Florida, you got to give them two different kinds of directions. They're not going to each receive the same thing. And so it's important that we recognize that. But I can spend a lot of time on that. Let's move along. Where we at? Verse 12. It says, through...
Please, I'm so sorry.
No problem. I can mute you. Look at verse 12. It says, through wickedness be sweet. It says, though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue. So now he's starting to bring in all this stuff dealing with eating and food and so forth. So he says now, you may have, though wickedness be sweet in your mouth. In other words, you enjoying your sin for a while, but then you try to, when you try to maneuver and somebody calls you on it, you hide your sin under your tongue. So that's the imagery that Zophar is trying to say. You're chewing wickedness, and when people look at you and say, oh, open your mouth. What's in your mouth? You take your sin and you hide it under your tongue. That's called what? Iniquity. That's what iniquity is, hiding your sin. I know I'm dealing in sin, and when somebody calls me on it, I'm going to hide it. All right? That's iniquity. It's also being a hypocrite, where you live that lifestyle, I'm going to live one way and try to portray the character of another way. All right? So it says you hide it in your mouth. Verse 14. Yet his meat in his bowels is turned, and in the gall of the asp is within him. So he's saying that even though you chew your iniquity and you hide it under your tongue, when you swallow it and it gets into your digestive system, it's going to eat you up alive. So when you're chewing on sin, chewing on wickedness, and you're hiding it, and you see the analogy he's trying to make, when you begin to digest it, it's going to cause you to have all kinds of internal intestinal problems. And so what he's saying is that's what's going on now with you, Job. You're having all these problems mainly because you've been hiding your sin, chewing on it and eating it, enjoying it, hiding it with your tongue. But now it's starting to really mess with you. You got some intestinal issues. You got some gas. You got the runs. You got diarrhea. All this stuff is bothering you, and it's coming out. And it don't smell good. It don't look good, Job. This is pretty bad, pretty awful. So he's getting kind of graphic here, if you can see that. And he's letting them know that this is an issue. And that's why you look the way you look, and why things happen to you in your life the way they did. Zophar's accusation. Look what he's saying here. Look, 14. He says, yet his meat in his bowels is turned. It is the gall of the asp within him. Verse 15. It says, he has swallowed down riches, and shall vomit them up again. God has caused them out of his belly. Has cast them out of his belly. All right, so look what he's saying. He says, so now when you're eating this wickedness and you're chewing on it, it's going to get into your system. Your system's going to be messed up. You're going to have internal intestinal issues. And then God's going to get involved, and God's going to make you so sick in your life that you begin to vomit up those things that you try to indulge in. So he's saying you're not going to have a good time. Nobody is happy when they have intestinal issues and they're throwing up, and that's not a fun time. You're not doing good. So what Zophar is saying, Job, this is what's happening to you. You're spiritually going through intestinal issues in your life. You are throwing up all of the ill activity that you were doing. And he's accusing Job. Now, from Zophar's point of view, he feels, I see what's happening, Job. This is what's happening to you. And though his concept may be correct, and it may be true that if these things happen to wicked people, this can be their result, it's not true for who? For Job. This is not what's happening with Job. So, when I read this and I'm sitting here and I go through this, I go, he's saying things that are not wrong, they're just misapplied. So then what's the issue? The issue goes back to like what Job said before. You guys don't know me. You are accusing me of things, and you should be ashamed of accusing me of this. Zophar should be, he should just stop. He should be like, wait a minute. I know Job is not like this, but what they're doing, they're putting their theology over their relationship with Job. That my theology about what I think happens to good or bad or right people is more important for me to believe than for me to believe who Job is. So therefore, I'm going to trump my theology and say, that's what's right. And Job, you must be wrong. Rather than saying, maybe I don't understand it all. Maybe I just don't get it. Sometimes I think I get it, but man, I know Job. I know who he is. I don't understand why this is happening to him. And that would then be the right answer. I don't really understand. I know Job. I've seen him. I've been with him. I spent time. I work with the guy. I don't see what's happening here. I don't get it. God is doing something very mysterious. I can't explain it. That would be the right answer. But they're trying to, no, I'm going to push Job down because my theology will not change. I'm going to believe what I believe about how things work because I think I know how it works. I have the answer. And so when you feel you have the answer, I know how it works, you can easily misapply it because you think because I know how it works, I can apply it to everybody. That's like the guy saying, I know how to make the perfect meal and I'm going to give the same perfect meal to everybody. Well, some people you may make feel good and some people you might make feel sick because they may not like the meal or they may be allergic to the meal. But when you refuse to recognize the person and the person's need and just apply your theology recklessly, regardless as to how you recognize or see the person, then you're not seeing people. And that's what Jesus died for. He didn't die for the 10 Commandments. He didn't die for all of the thou shalt nots. He died for man. And he died for man while we were yet sinners. While we were yet sinners, he what? Died for us.
For us. Amen.
And so his love for us is key. That's what Zophar and Bildad and Eliphaz don't have. They're not showing the love for Job at all. They're showing their love for what they believe and what they think, but not for Job. See, love covers a multitude of what? Of faults and sin. Exactly. So, but let's keep going. He's going to keep on with this digestive system thing. Verse 16 it says, he shall suck the poison of asp, the viper's tongue shall slay him. In other words, Job, you've been chewing on poisonous snakes. So when you're dealing with sin, it's like dealing with poisonous snakes, and that's what you've been dealing with, Job. And you got bit. You got bit by one of those snakes you've been playing with. You've been playing with sinful stuff, and that sinful stuff turned around and bit you. Now, once again, is that a true thing? If you play with sin, can sin turn around and bite you? Of course it can. But is that what happened with Job? Nope. It's not Job's situation. Verse 17. He shall not see the river, the floods, the brook of honey or butter. So what he's saying is, Job, You're not going to see any more good days, brother. You're not going to see the river, the overflow of the water, the floods, the brook. You're not going to see any honey, and you're not going to see any butter. All that good stuff that you get when you're doing well, you're not going to get to see any of that. Now, we know, once again, if you read the last chapter of the book, that's incorrect. Job's going to get all his stuff back and more. All right? But Eliphaz's theology is telling him, Job, you're done. There's no hope. So Eliphaz's theology gives Job what? Zero hope. Eliphaz's, I'm saying Eliphaz, this is Zophar rather. Zophar's theology is giving Job zero hope. He's not telling him, well, if you trust in God, God will see you through this. Job, I know you, and I also know God. Job, I know you're a good guy, and I know God's a good God. So with that, all I can tell you is, though I don't know why you're going through this, I can tell you, hang in there. Because you're a good guy, and God's a good God. God is gooder than you. You're a good guy from a natural standpoint. God's a good God from a perfection standpoint. God can do no wrong. So that would be the proper thing to give to Job, but he's not. He's telling Job, you're not going to see any butter, brother. You're not going to get any honey. Don't expect to taste anything sweet anymore. Those days of eating sweet things for you, Job, is over. Man, what kind of hope is that given to a sick man? Imagine you going into the hospital praying for the sick. Yeah, I know you're sick, but let me tell you, your well days are over. You are done. Who's going to go in the hospital and do that? Nobody. Even when you know a person may be terminal, you still don't talk to people like that. You still try to what? Give people what? Hope. You tell them, the one thing I can guarantee you is that God knows about it. And God's a good God. Now, what he's going to do, I can't say. And if he's going to do things according to how we view right or wrong, or what should be the next step, may not be something that I can answer. But I know God is good. And I tell you, you just keep trusting in the Lord. Zophar's not talking like that. Alright? Verse 18. That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restoration be. He shall not rejoice therein. So basically what he's saying is, there are times of restoration, there's times for things to be restored, but Job, you're not going to get to experience any of that. I think it's good. Let me read that to you in the Amplified. It says, he gives back what he has labored for and attained, and cannot swallow it down to enjoy it. So he's saying that even if you have stuff, and you're not going to be able to what? To enjoy. You're not going to be able to find ways to, you got the nice car, but you can't drive it. You got, it reminds me, I'll tell you this story here. This just popped in my mind. When I used to do landscaping, and we went up to this yard that we were cutting all the time. Every week we would cut this yard. And we pulled up there, and there were these stacks of boxes. And a lot of times we would cut grass in very rich neighborhoods. So when they would throw out stuff, we'd peep in the boxes to see if anything valuable is in there. Because sometimes what they may be considered garbage may be something we considered to be, hey, I can still use that. And we would find a lot of little nice little knickknacks and everything that they would throw out. And so we walked up there, we looked at the box, and we opened up. It was a bunch of magazines. You know what kind of magazines they were? They were all those girly, nudie magazines. All boxed up. And so when we got down to the place we were cutting the lawn and everything, and so we met with the lady, and we told the lady, we saw the boxes up there, and this was and she goes, oh yeah, those were my husband's, but he can't use them anymore because he done went blind. So all I could do was just, I tried not to laugh in the lady's face because it wasn't something to laugh about. But the irony of that, the fact that he had all those magazines and now he's blind. He can't see any of that stuff. So I never forgot that, man. That was something else. But that's what Zophar is saying here. He said, you're gonna mount up all these things thinking I'm gonna sit back and relax. And I kind of imagine he's saying, well, I'm gonna collect all my magazines and I'm just gonna sit back and relax and just watch all my little nudie stuff. And now he's blind, he can't watch any of it. And they had to throw it out. Alright? And so this is what Zophar is saying, and to a degree, is what he's saying true? Of course. But does it apply? No. And so once again we get back. I think when we first started this book, I told you how a lot of what these things and what these guys are saying will have some value. It's just that it's not applied properly. And I think I gave you the example of, you got the gasoline and you have oil, and you need both of those for your car. But if you put the oil in the gas tank and the gas where the oil is, that's a problem. Both of the things are needed, but you got to apply them properly. And that's what we're seeing here with Zophar. He's not applying this properly. He's saying things that are proper. He's got the right gas, he's got the right oil, but he's not putting it in the right place. He's not applying it correctly. And therefore it does Job no value. It's no help to Job whatsoever. All right. Verse 19. Because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violated and taken away a house which he built not. So what he's accusing Job of now. Job, you oppressed the poor, and you went and you took away the labor of somebody else. Somebody else built a house, and you came and took it. Now, once again, that's not true, but does that happen? Happens all the time. You can pay your mortgage all for 40 years, for 30 years, pay your mortgage, and then you forget to pay your taxes or get backed up on your taxes for 1 year, and guess what happens? They're gonna come in and try to take your house. And see, that's the way our system is, and we look at it. We all know that's how it works, and we say, "Oh, that's how it works." That don't make it right, just because that's how it works. That still ain't right. But there's a lot of ways that people can come and can manipulate and can take things from people that have done and worked hard all their lives. And so what Zophar is saying, Job, that's what you're doing. You manipulated the poor. We talked about that, I think, either in our last lesson or in our Exodus study. How you got people that are poor, and then you got people that have a lot of money, and they go and take money from the poor. You already have a lot of money, and you're taking more money from the poor. How? Charging them 25 and 30 and 35% interest. Manipulating them. And what Zophar is doing, he's pointing out, this is a wrong thing to do. And you're doing it, but that's not true. That's not what Job was doing. All right, so all his accusations are lining up as far as things you should not do, but he's not hitting the real issue because he doesn't know the issue. All right, he doesn't get it. 20. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. In other words, you're not going to feel quietness in your belly. You know how when you walk around and your belly's making all that noise? You don't feel good, right? You got all that gas and everything's going on. And you ain't comfortable around yourself, and you definitely ain't comfortable around others, right? Because you know there's going to be a problem. And so what Eliphaz is saying, that's what you are, Job. He goes, surely you shall not feel any quietness in your belly. He shall not save of that which he desires. So you're going to have this. Remember, he's making that illustration for the last couple of verses about Job chewing wickedness and having intestinal problems because he's hiding wickedness under his tongue, and his bowels are becoming to have issues, and God's making him vomit up. And so he's letting them know, now you're going to have all this sinful gas and sinful uncomfortableness going on amongst you, and you're not going to be able to move or go forward in any of your activities, because these activities require your ability to be in the right plane, and you're not. When you're having when you're throwing up or having diarrhea and different things, you can't do certain things. You ain't looking to go out. I'm gonna go out and do a marathon shopping. You're not doing that when you got all that stuff going on. And so what he's saying is you're being housed and trapped, Job. That's why you can't do anything. That's why you're stuck in the house with your rotten skin and your boils everywhere, because God has confined you because of your sin. He's not allowing you to go out. He's making sure that you're too miserable to do anything. Well, Job is miserable, but it's not for the cause that he's saying. All right. 21. Therefore shall none of his meat be left. Therefore shall no man look upon his goods. All right. So once again, he's talking about that meat, that food thing. He's saying, none of it's going to be left. No man is going to look upon your goods. Look at verse 22. In the fullness of sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. All right, so all that you have, any good meat, any good food, anything that you have, anything that has sufficiency in it, because of your wickedness, it's going to be taken or removed from you. Why? Number one, you can't use it. Right? If you got good food around you, but your stomach and your digestive system is all messed up, how much of that good food you going to eat? You're not eating none of it. So that's what Eliphaz is saying. You may even have good stuff around you. You may have some wonderful stuff that you could just reach out and grab, but you're not going to want any of it. You know why? Because your system is all messed up. And why is your system messed up, Joe? Because you've been dealing and hiding sin. Well, once again, is Zophar's comments correct? To a degree, they do apply, but they don't apply to who? To Job. Okay? Verse 23. It says, when he is about to fill his belly, God shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. So he's saying, if you do look around you, in this, and somehow or another you muster up enough energy to spitefully still reach to grab something to eat, to still fill your belly after all that stuff. You got the runs, you're vomiting, you got gas and all that going on. You see the digestive thing he's talking about, right? And you still trying to eat. He's saying God's going to stop it. He said God shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him and rain down upon him while he is eating. So if you do that, then God's just going to make it just get worse. He's going to make it get intensified. It ain't going to be anything worth. You see the digestive analogy that Zophar's trying to make here. And that is that all's going to happen. Your gas is going to get worse. Your runs are going to get worse. The wrath of God will come down on you, man. And you're going to have a bad time. I'm laughing because sometimes you can eat something and for whatever reason, either the food was bad or maybe it was some kind of food poison or whatever, but you eat and all of a sudden you just sitting there just enjoying TV or something. All of a sudden your body tells you, hey, you got to go. You got to hit the bathroom, brother. And it's like the wrath of God has come down upon you. And you got to make sure you go in there because there's going to be thunder and then lightning and you got to go. Well, this is what Zophar's talking about. He's like, Job, but he's bringing the analogy. Your sin is like this. Your sin is noisy and smelly and gassy, and it's because of what you eating, Job. You're eating sin. And that's what's happening. Well, once again, his statement can have some proper application, but it doesn't apply to Job. How many times through this book am I going to say that? I said it 100 times. I'm probably going to say it 100 times more, because that's what the book's about. get to know people before you apply your circumstances to them. All right? Get to know who they are. All right? You look at who Jesus picked. He picked 12 disciples. All of them were different kind of people. He didn't pick all the same folks. And that's what we need to get. If we practice that would stop a lot of racism. It would stop a lot of things that we see going on. If you just say, I'm going to get to know people before I throw blanket answers on them. Before we say things like, all people, from Mexico are like this, and all Italians are this way, and all Asians are this way, and all black folks are this way. And we want to get to know them. Get to know an individual and apply to him or her their proper assessment by the relationship you have with that person. And so, but we're so quick to group things. And so what Eliphaz is doing, he's just grouping Job into his own theology. Job, you fit into my slot right here. Instead of him saying, no, wait a minute, Job, forget my slot. I know you. So his friendship was not as important as his theology. Right? But yet God says that we should love our enemy, right? And no greater love a man has than he lay down his life for his friend. And we should love our neighbor as our what? As ourselves. So all of that is lost in these discussions between these gentlemen and Job. These things are not happening. They are loving their viewpoints more than they're loving and caring about Job. All right. Look at 24. It says, he shall flee from the iron weapon and bow, and then the bow of steel shall strike him through. So he's saying that when you're dealing with this, he kind of changes his attack a little bit. So he's letting them know that you're going to also be dealing with fights and arguments and debates. When you're in sin, people are going to want to hurt you and kill you. So when he says you shall flee from the iron weapon, that means a sword or a spear. Someone's looking to get you, because when you do sin and you do wrong and people recognize that you've cheated and lied and stole from them, they look for you to get back at you. And Job is saying this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen to you. So what he's basically saying is, Job, the worst ain't even, you think this is the worst? This ain't the worst. Because right now you just lost your children, lost your wealth, and you lost your health. But soon, the people that you robbed and stole from, they're going to come looking for you with a sword and with a knife. Right? And with bows and arrows. He says you got bows of steel that shall strike him through. 25. It is drawn and cometh out of the body. So he's saying they're going to draw it, and they're going to take it and stick it and pull it back. They're going to stab you with it and pull it out of your body. Yea, the glittering sword cometh out of its gall, terror are upon him. So he's going to pull the sword out and he's going to look to kill you. Why, Job? Because you've done people wrong and now they're coming for vengeance. And so, once again, if you do people wrong, if you steal from somebody, you think people looking to get their stuff back, and they may, of course. But is that what happened to Job? Nope.
No.
Job did not do this. 26. All darkness shall be hid in his secret place. A fire not blown shall consume him. It shall go ill with him that is left in his own tabernacle. So what he's basically saying is the secret stuff that you're doing is going to emerge to the point where it's going to burn. It's going to burn like a fire. And when it talks about how it's going to cause ill in his own tabernacle, that means it burns you, but it also burns your dwelling. And when you say burn your dwelling, you're talking about those whom you what? Live with. Your tabernacle is the place that you live. If you look at 26 once again from the Amplified version, it says complete darkness, misfortune is held in reserve for his treasure, the unfeigned fire will devour him. It will consume the survivors of his own tent. So what he's saying is that, Job, the fact that you are sick and you are dealing with this, that consumption not only destroyed you, but it also came into your own home, into your own tabernacle, into your own tent. And it killed what? It didn't just cause you to be sick, but it also killed your what? Your children. We forget, Job's children died. So this is why Zophar is saying this absolutely must be what's happening, because Job, your children did die. And that's why they died. So he's telling Job, I'm gonna tell you why your children died. And he's blaming Job for the death of his children. Look at that. 27. The heavens shall reveal his iniquities, and the earth shall rise up against him. So what he's saying that all the spiritual, all the earth, all things of God are going to reveal and show your iniquity. Now that can't be anything further from the truth, because what's going to happen is all the things of God and all the things that God's going to point out are going to show Job's what? Innocence. Zophar couldn't have been any more wrong than right here. Be careful how you accuse people. You think you know what you're talking about, but a lot of times we don't. We think we understand what's going on. Most of the time we don't have all the information. We think we do, but we don't. And we start talking and yapping, and before you know it, we reckon, oh, okay, I done said the wrong thing. They're going to get to that point, but they're not there yet. All right. Where am I? 28. The increase of his house shall depart, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. The final verse. This is the portion of a wicked man from God, and the heritage appointed unto him by God. Wow. That's almost like Zophar saying amen and amen. But he's wrong and wrong and wrong. Okay? The increase of the house is departed. Yes. Has Job's house, has his increase stopped? Yes. But it's not going to continue to stop. His house is going to grow again. Job's going to have more children. So it's not over. And that's the part where I think we no matter what happens, the phrase is it's not over. It's something we should hang on to. Yes, sir.
I think this really shows us and give us wisdom not to be so fast to speak on a situation.
Exactly.
You know, because we can make a lot of mistakes, you know, like judging someone or saying something about someone that you really don't know. You know, they could have a condition. You know, you see some. I remember one time there was a woman, I think she had like some kind of swelling or something in her stomach. And the people were saying she was pregnant, and the woman wasn't. But they didn't, yes, if a woman's belly is normally out, that means she's what? She's pregnant.
Exactly.
They were right at what they could see.
Right.
But she had a condition. There was something else going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that teaches us that we should be careful how we say things about people.
That's right. That's right. When you have that condition, when you're walking around, you see a woman like that, you normally say, okay, she's expecting a child. But in her case, and that's the thing, if they had gotten to know her and to know what she was dealing with, they would know not to apply that to her, even though normally you would apply that. But it didn't apply to her. And that's what's going on here with Job. It's a very good example. That it's not that what they're saying is bad concepts, but the concepts are not being applied to Job, because what they are not doing is what God tells us to do. That we should come together, we should talk, we should get to know each other, we should try to mend wounds. And so instead of them doing any of that, they decide to accuse Job, and that's easy to do. See, we want to place blame. This is why. Well, why is our economy going down? Well, I'm going to blame the people coming from Mexico taking our jobs. Or I'm going to come blame the rich people for doing this. And I'm going to blame. And so all we want to do is blame. Everybody's looking for someone that we can blame when reality is that we should go to God. God knows what's going on. And I will say this. It's never over. It's always in the hand of God. And that's the thought. So you look at, when sometimes you say, well, I fear the worst, and the next thing you know, well, the worst has happened. So, okay, so the worst has happened that you could fear, but does that mean God is not aware? It does not mean that. God is still aware, and God can still handle the circumstance. Well, why do I have to go into this kind of a situation? It still doesn't change the fact that God still is handling the situation. He's handling the circumstances, however he decides to. The question is, will we yield ourselves to what God is doing? Like Job did here. Job, he had no choice but to yield himself, but what he didn't do was he didn't say, I did something, okay, I must be wrong. He held on to his integrity, and he never left God. He always believed God as being the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He held on to that. Though he was confused, and though he was very, bewildered as to why all of this was going on with him, yet he held on to his confidence that God knows, and somehow God knows how to handle it. Though I think God may be, and Job was accurate in saying, I think God may be unfair, because from Job's standpoint, he seems that this doesn't seem to be fair. But Job's concept is on fairness is limited by his own vision and what he can see. We would see fairness totally different if we could see things like God does. But guess what? We can't. We can only see things as God reveals them to us. We can't see the whole totality like God can see it. Sometimes God can give us a revelation that will help us to see things clearer, but we never can see things exactly like God. All right, so we're going to stop there. Next week we're going to hear Job talk a little bit more, and then we're getting to the point where we're going to be finished with those friends, and then Job's going to have a nice long conversation, and then we're going to get to hear from another guy who's happened to be sitting around listening to all of this, and then God's going to come in. But we're about halfway through now, so as I said, I'm going to take my time continuously through this. We're going by, it's like what we say, we take one chapter at a time, one verse at a time, and I think that's how we get some of the goodness. It can be a little long-winded sometimes, but I think you get the point when you start reading through it. All right, any other comments or questions?